All righty, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining another session of the Fortinet podcast. I'm your host, Chris Dorn, Network Practice Director over here at XenTegra. Today, I have a couple new people joining. I have Fadel Matar. He's up in Canada. He joins us on the XenTegra Canada side. A very well-versed network engineer, a solutions architect from his side. We also have Patrice Edenboro with us, our New York-based solutions architect with XenTegra. Dave Wynegar is a solutions architect with XenTegra / one marksman, as well as new to us is Garrett Brown, who is moving positions here with Ingram Micro to the backfill Michael Wier as he's moving into more of a technical marketing solution role with Ingram Micro. But always a pleasure to have you guys with us and to chat about some of these things as we continue the XenTegra journey with Fortinet right now. So thank you guys. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So if you've listened to the first two podcasts, we kind of started out with the FortiGate solution, and since then we've kind of stepped through a couple deployments there. We're currently in the mix of maturing the deployments, tightening any bolts, tweaking a few things here and there, but for the most part, kind of expanding upon that. And then the second session, we kind of touched on FortiSwitch and FortiAPs and kind of how that was managed back by the FortiGates. But since then, we kind of came back around and circled back to how we were going to license this and manage it, especially for our MSP customers, and how we were going to take advantage of already having connections and responsibility for a lot of that equipment. So over the past couple of weeks, I've had some examples, demos, discussions around how do we go about licensing these platforms. And the FortiManager, at the end of the day, it's really either an on-prem VM or a cloud component that you subscribe to, and you're using that to manage your FortiGates, your FortiSwitches and access points through that FortiGate. And then we license it per FortiGate that we have kind of synced up and registered with the FortiManager. And then on the flip side of that, we want to see the traffic. We want to know who's doing what. So then you introduce the FortiAnalyzer, and just like the manager, we can do that on-prem. We can do it in the cloud. But it's a little bit different because it's kind of based on the amount of traffic that you're ingesting into that appliance during the day. So I think it's 5 gigs per chunk on the license, and you just stack those up as you kind of grow. So you don't need to like jump out of the gate with 100 gigs worth of storage license there. You can kind of grow as you need. And then on top of that, like kind of our deployment that we went down, we have 2 data centers, East Coast and West Coast, and we're placing one node into each data center, so there's synchronization between the data centers so that there's always a copy available on either side of the country here. So what were some of the things that I was kind of maybe a little misunderstanding or scratching my head on was kind of like how we would go about licensing this, because you have like the FortiCloud, and then you have the FortiManager, and then you have the on-prem options as well. So anybody want to take a stab and maybe kind of sorting through how they see that and how you present that to customers?
Yeah, I can hop in. This is Michael Wier, of course, the technical account manager / technical marketing engineer. So the licensing for FortiManager is pretty straightforward. It's just number of devices. And by devices, they mean FortiGates. Since the FortiSwitches and the FortiAPs can be controlled by the FortiGate, you only have to license for that FortiGate. So if I have 5 FortiGates, 50 switches, and 200 APs, I would only need to license those 5 FortiGates, and everything else would be controlled from the FortiManager to them. Even though they're separate devices like that. And then you mentioned the consumption models. So it can be consumed as a physical device, as a VM or a SaaS from the cloud. The physical devices, very few people consume those, not because there's anything necessarily wrong with them, but because they're not expandable. For example, the lowest level one is 30 devices. Once you hit 30, if you want to go to 31, you have to buy a new piece of hardware. The VM and the cloud version, the SaaS version, are much more frequently consumed because they're both expandable up to about 10,000 devices. So what you would do, the base license for the FortiManager is 10 devices if we're looking at a VM, and then you just stack on 10 device licenses on top of that as needed. And of course, there's bigger quantities if you need 500 devices or 1,000 or something along those lines. That's how the FortiManager is licensed out. That's the straightforward one. I'll just roll into the FortiAnalyzer since we're having this conversation. So FortiAnalyzer is licensed by logs per day and gigabytes of logs per day. And that means that it's a little more fuzzy on the sizing. The upside is it doesn't matter how many devices you have, because not just, a FortiManager is just FortiGate, FortiSwitch, FortiAP, and some SD-WAN and VPN functions. The FortiAnalyzer is anything in the fabric that reports security information, as well as anything else that reports syslog. It's expandable moment to moment. So as you said, it starts off at 5 gigs, but if you ever want to stack more on, you can just buy bigger packages up from there. The my rule of thumb I start off with, if you have a FortiGate that's just sitting on the internet and nobody's using it, the amount of WAN to LAN threats coming in any given day is roughly 350 megabytes. And that's just the noise on the internet of people blasting out huge amounts of traffic to just, try to hit the easy target or something along those lines. Generally, what I plan for is if you're talking about a firewall of like 50 people or yes, I would plan for about 500 megabytes per day per firewall. And if you're talking about, more than 50 people up to, 150 or 200 people, probably gonna be closer to a gig a day. But like I said, the FortiAnalyzer is quickly expandable. So you get 7 days of overrun before it starts to chop logs. So if you get the 5 gigs and you realize every day I'm doing 6 or 7 gigs, you can just co-term in another 5 gigs on top of that. There are other licenses to be involved, like for FortiManager, I think you mentioned FortiCloud. So there's FortiManager Cloud, which is the SaaS delivery of FortiManager, but there's also FortiGate Cloud, which if you're familiar with certain other cloud manufacturers that favor ease over granularity, that will be very familiar to you because it is just the GUI ported to the cloud and the GUI's reporting ported to the cloud. It's super easy to use, not super granular. And yeah, there's a couple of add-on licenses for the FortiAnalyzer too. So they have one that's called Indicators of Compromise. It's basically pattern recognition. So it says, I made the decision, as I being the FortiAnalyzer, made the decision that this is a compromised device based on seeing this, and this happen, as opposed to having to hunt through the logs and decide something that's compromised for yourself. Another license that a lot of people get is called the SOC services license. This is automation and playbooking and handlers and things like that. So like with the FortiAnalyzer and the FortiGate, you always get handlers, which are if-then statements. And it's if the FortiAnalyzer sees this, then it tells the FortiGate, hey, do your automation based on when I see this, and the FortiGate does the automation. The SOC services take it a step further and it lets you playbook. So it's multivariable and it's across the whole environment. So I can say, when we see a critical IPS incident, I want to run a report on it. I want to create an incident ticket on it. I want to attach the indicators of compromise on any software vulnerabilities or anything else being pulled. If there's an endpoint involved, create a ticket and inform somebody that this ticket has been made. That's what the SOC services is. It's really taking it from what I would call more of a passive SOC, where you're doing mostly investigative work, to an active SOC, or almost a SOAR for the Forti environment, where you're automating away actions that either A, critically need to be done at machine speed, or B, would be sort of a level 1, level 2 tech supports type job. And the remaining
is that all? I got a question for that. Is that all through the analytics, or can you create a I guess metadata or tag data within trying to determine like a DLP or data loss prevention strategy and seeing from your SIEM solutions, and then it sounds like what you're speaking about right now is more of a SOAR for the automation. Is this all through the AI and analytics without any kind of programming or onboarding of data, or do you have to have an onboarding process and then make other rule adjustments to look for a specific compliancy type data?
So the FortiAnalyzer itself can track and act on any variable in the FortiOS, the FortiGates OS, and it can write out to anything that can be written in the CLI of the FortiGates OS. But it does have the ability to make custom variables as well. But there usually isn't a lot of a need to reinvent the wheel because your alerts are already coming over categorized. You can say, this constitutes a data loss prevention event. I'm going to set all data loss prevention events as critical with threshold of 5 times in 1 minute. And it'll send me an email with the log file tagged, and then it'll tag it in the logs as well. But you can also create multivariable handlers and custom, Alex, I wouldn't call them custom because CLI variables because there are things already in the CLI, but custom OS tracker combinations of variables that show you what you want to see. There's hundreds of presets in there, but yeah, you can make custom ones if you so desire. But unless you're in a really specific use case, typically speaking, all the necessary information and all the necessary pullers and polling are built in there.
Right out of the box. That's awesome.
So is this a pretty integrated part of like if you were to build up to like a complete SOAR deployment? Is that the analyzer is pretty critical for that information, is it not, as a data source?
Yeah, so there's two ways to look at this. So if you're looking at purely at the Forta part of your environment, the FortiAnalyzer can be a SOAR to the Forta part of your environment. There is also FortiSOAR, which is a SOAR to, I think, close to 8,000 other products. Or maybe I'm thinking of FortiSim. Either way, it's a SOAR to pretty much any product that speaks industry standard language or for any of the other manufacturers' products that have that integration. Of course, Fortinet has 200 other fabric partners that they work with that'll automate the whole environment. And it's not necessarily an either or, but for those who have a small environment of 10 or 15 people, where they just need to have control of FortiClient on the endpoints, maybe email security and the switches access points and FortiGate, that's where the FortiAnalyzer is their first major step towards the SOAR.
Excellent. And for our audience there, the integration part is something that was in one of the blogs that we're kind of using to build a framework around our discussion today. And it was from August of last year, August 17th, 2021, Bill Darsh had written an article about the Fortinet and HashiCorp's empowerment of DevOps with Terraform and FortiManager integration. So the integration piece, as we know, is pretty vital anymore. And it sounds like, based on what we're discussing here, we're not just managing and looking at logs at that point. We're expanding into other areas of our DevOps, our SecOps, our actual deployment for day-to-day business here, and how vital having a successful deployment with this is. So as you all know, definitely building it out from scratch. It was a lot to think about from the MSP side. So it's very good stuff we're talking about here.
No, part of it's leveraging too that Fortinet's an open OS. There's nothing closed off about it. There's no proprietary protocols or anything like that. And the FortiAnalyzer can send any command that's compatible with FortiOS to it. So when you plug in something like Terraform, you've got access to everything that's in the FortiGates OS at your fingertips as just an API connection.
Nice.
I'm sorry. I just want to circle back because I was given my chance to go through explaining the analyzer and the manager. But I would just like to circle back on the manager. I know you said that the licensing model is very straightforward. If you have one FortiGate and you're managing all of your devices, your 40 switches and so on from that FortiGate, you just have to buy the license for the FortiGate. But my question is, in an environment where somebody might not be managing their devices from the FortiGate, but actually doing standalone, where they're managing their switches standalone, or they're managing the other devices within the network, the 40 switches and so on within the network standalone. How would that licensing model now fit in? Would they have to convert, or they'll have to think about, when I say convert, I mean converting to managing via FortiGate, or would they have to pay for each individual device now because they're doing it standalone? Just wanted a little clarity on that.
Yeah, so what the FortiGate is, or what the FortiManager is counting in the background is config files. So say you've got 15 separate Forti switches all functioning on their own. That's technically 15 config files. So that'd be 15 devices. But let's say you've got those stacked then in stacks of 2, which Forti switches can do on their own. those two share configuration files, so then it would only eat one. So instead of having 10 devices, you only have 5 devices, so to speak. And there's other options for that as well. There's actually a standalone FortiSwitch manager if you want to go that way, and there's a standalone wireless controller as well as FortiLAN cloud for doing that management as well, for people that would find the FortiManager to be overkill for those situations.
Okay, I was going to bring that up too. That's good to know. So with that, like one of the components we went down investigation with was, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, Michael, but the difference between the FortiCloud and then the FortiManager cloud. And I think where we started to see that difference was if you had different domains of users that were going to participate in the management and the maybe only read-only views of the logs and configurations and what have you. Is that a common scenario for customers where they need more robustness in the different credentials that users might have to interact with the deployment, or is that more like you only see that in the MSP worlds?
No, that's definitely, I mean, anybody who has more than one tech usually has to implement some sort of workspace or workflow system for that. If you're functioning in FortiGate Cloud or anything in FortiCloud, the authentication structure follows the account structure in it. So like I could set up Garrett so he can open tickets and can, read only in certain pieces of the cloud, but then read write in others or authorized or non-authorized devices. But doing it in FortiGate Cloud or anything else in FortiCloud, it's always going to follow your account structure. When you're doing it in FortiManager, you can make whatever structure you want. You can create usernames, passwords, privileges,
Okay.
approvers, all that kind of thing, right in the FortiManager itself. And it's all about a complexity thing. Like FortiGate Cloud is meant for quick deployment, quick fixing, and quick reporting from single or multiple devices from one deployment, more or less. Whereas FortiManager is when you're going to make your templates, you're going to make your golden images, you're going to make object-based programs, that sort of thing.
Okay, extremely more versatile and flexible
Yes.
in some of the options there. So is it true the FortiManager cloud is really a VM that's deployed for you in Fortinet's infrastructure?
More or less, yeah. There's a couple of little hiccups. In fact, Fortinet has a document in all the FortiManager release guides that tells any differences between FortiManager Cloud and regular FortiManager. Generally, the differences revolve around certain reporting features, because FortiManager actually contains a FortiAnalyzer when you're using the VM, but it doesn't if you're using the cloud one, and a little bit of Active Directory integration differences. But yeah, primarily they've got feature parity, and like I said, there's a specific doc with every new release that says if there's anything that hasn't moved on to the cloud one.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, so for our customers, there's not too many key considerations to get you off the ground, but is there, if say a customer was to go down the wrong decision and they purchase something, just by rolling it into a bundle or clicking on something and not being really sure, is there a way to migrate, say, from like your FortiCloud to a FortiManager? Is there a way to move that over? Okay.
Definitely. So the master no matter what you're managing the FortiGate with, the master configuration always resides on the FortiGate itself. So let's say you're managing via FortiGate Cloud and you want to move to FortiManager. It's just a toggle switch in the FortiGate's GUI to say, we're going to go from FortiGate Cloud to FortiManager, put in the IP address of the FortiManager. And then in the FortiManager, just say import configuration. And now you've pulled it into control of the FortiManager. Same way the other way with FortiGate Cloud. FortiGate Cloud, if you just switch the toggle over there, it'll automatically import the configuration, but it can be done moment to moment. You can even, on the FortiAnalyzer side, you can even log to a FortiAnalyzer and FortiGate Cloud at the same time if you want to.
Oh yeah, put one up on each screen. Interesting, very cool. I had something else there. Oh, high availability. We're definitely looking at placing into each of the 2 data centers. And from my understanding, you'll have your active node and then it'll send a read-only copy to the passive node unless the active node goes offline. Is that true in my understanding of that kind of deployment?
Yeah, and typically people do active deployments more frequent, or active passive deployments more frequently with the FortiAnalyzer than they do with FortiManager, simply because FortiAnalyzer is a SOC. It's constantly parsing logs and looking for compromise and things along those lines. Whereas FortiManager, if FortiManager goes down and up, there's no change to the user experience on the end. So it's less frequent that people have high availability on those. But yeah, basically it would be mirrored settings back and forth between the two.
Okay. Is there potentially high availability, like a pair in each of our data centers we should consider, or would one node in each location suffice if we were active passive across regions?
So I would say, so it depends a little bit on your goals, but I would say it's best to have FortiAnalyzers in 2 different regions, just so that if one of your regions goes down, then the other is still there. As far as if you want to have high availability in region, that totally depends on how confident you are in your infrastructure. More than it does any necessarily best practice thing. You know, it's the old issue of, do I want two WAN connections from the same ISP, or one WAN connection from 2 different ISPs? You know, which is going to give you more resiliency? Probably one from 2 different ISPs, but it's that same cost benefit analysis.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now I see like Terraform's got like some of their competition comes from like ServiceNow, Cloud Bolt. I guess Azure's even got one kind of native to Azure management tools. Is that, are you aware of Fortinet expanding that kind of integration and using those connector plugins that they're developing for the FortiOS, or is that something maybe they just pick Terraform to kind of jump off the block with?
I know there's integrations with Azure. I'd have to look up if there are ServiceNow or not. Generally, the hierarchy that we look at things like Terraform is high on Fortinet's priority list, simply because it's a very technical tool that appeals to the very technical minds of, your large MSPs, large MSSPs, people doing DevOps and testing, that kind of thing. And they've had a relationship for a relatively long time. Like, you'd be hard pressed to go to any Fortinet event and not have somebody talking about Terraform. Even if you're doing like your NSE 7 enterprise firewall exams or something like that, they'll have you use Terraform. Not that you have to for the test, but just that it's easier to configure that way. As far as the Azure and the competing ones like that, like I said, we have about 200 different partner vendors. I have to look up and see if ServiceNow is one of them, but I know Azure, the majority of their tools integrate into us, and we're native to that environment anyway.
Gotcha. Which helps that flow. So is any automation you can present and give that an option to your teams is just completely.
It's worth noting too that
valuable.
Fortinet has 2 things that'll be useful to people doing that. Number one is Fortinet actually has a couple of GitHub sites that have one of which has a lot of resources dedicated just to Azure and doing the various functions in Azure. And they also have something called a Fortinet Developers Network, which is APIs and code snippets and that sort of thing that has been community designed and vetted to give you a jump start on putting together these projects, just so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Gotcha. Well, we back up a little bit and maybe look at the deployment options there. If you found is there a sweet spot to kind of get off the block? Say if you were to manage 10 or less FortiGates with FortiManager, is this like a 4 virtual CPU by 16 gigs of RAM kind of thing, or is that maybe a little too light? Is that a little maybe not heavy enough?
So it sort of depends. Fortinet doesn't cap any sort of performance. It only caps number of vCPUs. So you can throw it, the more resources you throw at something, the more, actually in FortiManager, you don't cap vCPUs. I misspoke on that one, but the more resources you allot to it, the higher the performance is going to be. So what Fortinet says with the VMs, all they state is basically universal. So they state the limit on the FortiGate VMs is storage, or FortiManager VMs is storage capacity. So it's 200 gigs per 10, more or less is what it breaks down to. And it needs at least 100 gigabytes of storage and 8 gigs of RAM to run, and a minimum of 4 vCPUs to run. But like I said, past that, it just depends on your performance. Obviously, FortiAnalyzer is going to be a little heavier because it's doing a lot more operations. But it's just on what level of performance you want it to have. When you reach an acceptable level for what you're trying to do, then you're good. If not, you can pour more resources into it. No, like I said, vCPUs is unlimited, RAM is unlimited. Yeah.
What type of database is built on the back end? Is it like a MySQL database or Postgres?
So you're starting to get above what I usually do with these things. I'm a horrible programmer. I don't do a ton of that. I know that when you're making APIs with them, you can make APIs in JSON. Now I don't know what it's being stored in the background. I couldn't tell you that.
No problem.
Yeah, I did see that like Terraform could also leverage JSON for some of that interaction. Very interesting.
Yeah. And the APIs are super versatile. Like I reflect on this because it was very amazing to me. But at one of the Fortinet NSE Experts Academies, somebody had created an API so that they could talk to their Alexa, and then the Alexa would configure the FortiGate, which is a horrible idea from a security perspective. But for a demo, it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, would be.
Well, my 3-year-old just learned how to ask Google if it could do some stuff. So I'd hate to think if my security operations were based on voice interaction. He'd have everything down in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
That is pretty slick when somebody can pull something like that off. So yeah, hopefully they'll announce the expert summit here shortly, because I'm really looking forward to that this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great thing to have. Last year it was back to in person. So, we were one of the first ones to get off the ground with actually seeing each other's faces. Garrett can give you a little more details on what actually happened there, because he attended that one. I unfortunately had another engagement to go to. But yeah, I mean, they're great places. You meet tons of great people.
Yeah, it was a good network. It was a really early kind of networking thing. So everyone's kind of, in little groups, but we definitely interacted a lot, and there's a lot of classrooms. It was good educational experience overall.
Did you attend the Vegas event or Orlando or both?
The Orlando one. I think we just made the cut when they were starting to lift restrictions and stuff last year. So I got down there for a little bit. It was a pretty quiet event. There wasn't like an overwhelmingly ton of people just because of what was going on, but I think it'll be probably bigger this year. So
yeah, looking forward to that. I'll definitely take advantage of that, and anybody else that wants to go, I think XenTegra will offer that up to try to take some folks similar to what we've done over the years with Citrix Synergy. So looking forward to trying to put that together and see what kind of group we can get down for that. I know the Accelerate's going to be virtual. But the experts, hopefully it'll maintain that in-person status there, because it'd be very, very cool to be a part of that.
And they have the best swag at experts too. I got a fedora one year.
I bet.
Yeah, Chris, I went to the Orlando one, Accelerate. It was a 1980s theme. They had the Martian, the spacesuit and everything. It was pretty neat. Set up, and then also you get an opportunity to take a test there as well, so you can get a voucher and you can take any of the tests you register for, and during the event, one of the 3 days that they have it. It's a good time.
Yeah, they have a couple contests and stuff down there as well. So they branch off into smaller groups, and they kind of whoever finishes fastest with the most points and stuff. There's some cash prizes. There's some other kind of prizes that they gave away with different T-shirts and different whatever. So definitely pretty interactive overall. So it's a fun event for sure.
Was that the Security Fabric Challenge that
Yep.
you were able to witness?
Yeah.
I can only imagine that's pretty awesome. So us as a partner, we're leaving, and again, we're still kind of new on this journey, but we've been selected to move up to the select partner level, and we're in transition for that. So that includes one free pass to the experts, and we're looking forward to using that and having some folks tag along with me. But excellent. Any other points about FortiManager or Analyzer that we might not have covered that you're holding in your pocket? Anybody?
So I would say one thing about FortiAnalyzer, that it's a very basic function, but its usefulness is discounted, which is that you can calendarize reports in FortiAnalyzer. So say you need to be PCI compliant, you want to get your PCI violation report every Friday. You can take and tell it, hey, every Friday run this report and email it to me. It gives you an extra layer of protection in case, I don't want to say against human forgetfulness or human non-interaction, but the device can tell you these things. It can even email you when certain events occur. Like I said, send out these reports. All these different ways to communicate with the human element too.
Oh, okay. So, the appliances themselves remind me a lot of Citrix Application Delivery Manager. They used to have a control configuration and then a HDX Insight, and those three tools, they ended up kind of rolling them into one. And then, of course, the deployment requirements went up pretty high. I think it's like 8 vCPUs and 32 gigs of RAM. But if you don't give it that, you kind of hurt yourself because it's almost unbearable to work with it. But I don't see a lot of customers really diving in to take advantage of some of that automation, and like that. Those reports are an excellent one that people should take advantage of on the Fortinet side. But I didn't see that too much in my history with that Citrix Application Delivery Manager. But it's excellent that kind of information's there, because it's helping you check boxes off as you continue down your compliance components of that you're looking to achieve. That you have to achieve anymore.
And same for cyber insurance too. A lot of cyber insurance these days wants to have audit trails, so we can't discount the weird policies that people are getting there either.
Those expensive policies for sure. I think Dave and I were chatting with a customer today about that. They're got to prove that they're able to meet the requirements to achieve that insurance.
And I'm not going to single out anybody individually, but there's some fly-by-night cyber insurance people, and there's some cyber insurances that are very good. What I recommend everybody doing is taking a look at your NIST 800-171A and your NIST 800-172. And if a cyber insurance company wants you to do something that contradicts or doesn't agree with something that NIST has said is a standard, you should probably look for a new cyber insurance company.
Yeah, I bet you could get in an expensive rabbit hole with that if you don't lead in the right way out of the gate.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a lot. Kind of like after a hailstorm, it's like, where'd all these roofers come from?
Yeah, right.
Interesting. That's the way of the world we live in.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, it's not just good enough to say you do these compliance regulations. You have to actually prove it. It's like trust but verify. So a lot of them are now auditors. Want to have an annual review to say, send me this information, show me your policy, show me this. How do your VPNs look? And that's where you want to be protected on both ends, not to have something happen, and want to be proactive about it.
yeah, proving those configurations and having a centralized area to manage that and contain it. So it's very important. So you opened up a whole nother area of discussion there, because it's like this thing isn't just configuring the couple policies that you might have on, say, your half dozen FortiGates that you have inside of your organization. This leads into a lot bigger and more in-depth discussion about how we can leverage these tools to kind of meet those compliancy requirements that we're mandated with anymore.
Oh yeah, and this is all no joke. There's certain industries and verticals are at such a high level of cyber risk that the cyber insurers are themselves getting reinsured. So your insurance is insured by insurance because the potential losses are so high.
Oh, technology just keeps doing us favors every day, doesn't it?
Exactly.
It's expensive to be in business anymore.
Oh yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, these are awesome points. I didn't even think of that kind of hopping into this today. So I'm glad that we brought that to light and get to share that with our listeners here. Excellent stuff. Well, I don't have anything else. I've got a lot to probably think about, and I'm sure Google a little bit more on it. But I'm excited about the journey. Again, we're going to be taking. Fadel dropped off here. He had another call that he had to take, but he's going to be helping with our deployment of the FortiAnalyzer and Manager, and really looking to get that in place. And
I have to do one more plug.
Yeah,
that
please.
is right now. If you're a Fortinet partner and you want to test drive it, either to see what XenTegra is going to do for you, or if you decide you want to do some of it yourself, both FortiManager and FortiAnalyzer are free for up to your first 3 devices.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Right.
First one's always free.
For the first 3.
There's been
Yeah.
a couple industries that have done that, haven't there? And no, that's really good to know. I mean, because once you get it in place, you start leveraging it and see that value in a real world scenario without having that investment hanging over your head. I mean, that goes a long way.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if done properly, you know, with some folks on this call right now, or even some of the additional people that help us deploy and manage these components, you know, that's really awesome. I really think that's pretty cool. But yeah, you know, any last words for the listeners, or any additional last thoughts? Well,
Just have, everybody's got to have some fun.
yeah, let's have some fun doing it. Well, I appreciate you guys so much for being a part of this. This is a lot of fun. It's always super informative for myself, and I'm sure everybody on the call. But you know, as we progress to the next item, I haven't solidified the topic at hand, but I'm sure it'll kind of play into this as we continue our journey with Fortinet and XenTegra. But looking forward to it, to continue these discussions. Again, super helpful. Kind of demystify things a little bit for especially people that are new to Fortinet. You know, we got rip and replace left and right, you know, and standardizing on Fortinet. It's been a pretty good journey so far. So as much as we're armed with the knowledge, and as much as we can arm our customers with the knowledge too, you know, it'll make a better overall Forti customer fabric. I kind of look at it like that. But very good, gentlemen. Thanks again for being here, and look to chat with you guys soon.
All right, yeah, everybody have a good day.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Definitely.